joined by Chuck Cooperstein, voice of the Mavericks, and as well-rounded of a sports journalist that I've ever known in all of my career of 40-plus years, joining us on 365 Sports. Chuck, we were talking about this, just a quick note. The Big 12 is going to have like a combined NFL combine-type deal now at Frisco at the Star. And it's like it makes sense. Your thoughts about the uniqueness of that decision by the Big 12?
Well, again, anything that allows Big 12 schools and Big 12 players to get greater visibility and maybe even, just more so on their own as opposed to being, thrown into the mosh pit with everybody else. How can that be a bad thing? I just don't see how there's any downside to that at all. I think Brett Yormark has been pretty creative, since he's come on the job here in the last 9 months. And I think he and his staff are to be applauded because they really are thinking out of the box and trying to do things to help the league be better and certainly help the league survive and thrive in a very, very strange world right now.
Chuck, what do you think the end game is for the Pac-12, Big 12, the conferences that are not the Big Ten and the SEC?
No, they're not. But I mean, I think the Big 12 is okay. I mean, I think the television contract they signed, guarantees them, as much if not more money than what they would have had otherwise. I think they were really smart to jump out in front. I think the Pac-12 is in a lot of trouble. I don't know where they're going to go. Maybe, do Oregon and Washington and Arizona State get picked off by the Big Ten, the Pac, and the Big 12 respectively. But the rest of the conference really holds very little media value. And that is the world that we are operating in right now. And I just can't see how a streaming deal works for anybody. Maybe it works in the sense that there's money that comes to the schools, but if you want to sit down on Saturday afternoon and watch college football and you're having to go to a streaming service and you can't switch around to games like you do when you're on DirecTV or your cable system or what have you, that's a non-starter. I know it's a non-starter for me. It may be a starter for people that are non-Paleozoic like you and me. But I one of the joys of sitting at home on Saturday is to be able to switch around and then, find a game. And maybe if the game is surprisingly good, stay with that game maybe a little longer than you might otherwise do so. I tell you what, unbelievable. I've got a guy at my door now.
That's okay. Go ahead and get it. And we'll wait for you to get back. That's fine.
Oh, I will call you back in a little bit, okay?
There we go. Okay,
right.
Good. Craig, that allows you to go back. This is live radio, TV, whatever right there. So there's Chuck. He's going to come back. We'll get him back on. Rob Douster from the field of 68 on the tournament at around 3:45 today. Craig, back to what you wanted to talk about more at length with the Pac-12 until we hear back from Chuck.
Well, I mean, I wasn't talking about that like I have like a comment to say. I just mean in general, I want to talk about it more and dive into it a little further. But, I mean, that's fine. I'll say on the Combine, again, there's given years where a Baylor, for example, might have like a guy or two that are legitimately going to be drafted. This year's one of those years. They got Siaki Ika, they got Connor Galvin, and beyond that, I mean, they might have like 10 XFL guys, and it's great to have those pro days and the XFL scouts show up, and now the USFL, and at one point in time it was the AAF, and whoever else is all playing right now. So you're going to have that regardless of your NFL caliber guys. But now, if there is a year where you've only got a couple, but then BYU's got theirs, and Cincy's got theirs, and Houston's got theirs, and Oak State's got theirs, like, I just wonder, like, how big it could get. That's, with 12 teams, that could be pretty big. But the bigger probably the better, because it'll ensure that all 32 teams will be there. They won't skip over Provo on a given year because there's only one guy and nobody's really that interested. So now, even if you don't have a great class per se, all combined, you're going to have enough ammo that, every scout, every team, every league is going to show up to see everybody in the conference, whether intentionally or not, because there's just going to be a collection of talent. So from that standpoint, I do think it's smart. I think the idea of making it kind of a combined event, you can really play that up like on NFL Network if you wanted to do it that route. So from that standpoint, I think it's pretty smart and a wise move. And I I was more or less getting at as well is like I've been to those pro days where it's pretty lackluster, and you're just kind of like, yeah,
well, you cover it because you really have to.
You have to, not because I wanted to.
And you get comments from the 1 or 2 players at the 10 or 12.
And it's like, okay, like this guy might go in the middle rounds, and that's cool. You're there to cover that guy. But, yeah, the fact that you're showing up to an event and you know that there's going to be, a big group to select from, to interview, to hear from and all that, I think that's a smart deal to put it all in one place.
Chuck Cooperstein back with us. Live radio TV at its best. Chuck,
there you go.
We continued on with the discussion about the combine. You were discussing the streaming compared to linear television, and we've been discussing this now for months and months and months.
Yeah, I mean, I just don't see how it works. It maybe works, who knows, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, but these schools aren't worried about 5 and 10 years from now. They're worried about now. Because as we've seen in the world of college athletics over the last 15 years, how much earthquake-like changes have occurred in that period of time. Things just constantly being moved around. There's no stability at all. You've got to go for what you can get right now. And right now, streaming is not the answer, at least in my humble opinion.
Chuck, one of those changes is name, image, and likeness, and it is very interesting to me. And you were around during the Pony Excess and what happened there. How do you think that those people involved, especially the administrators at SMU and people who had to claw out of the death penalty, feel like looking back that everything that they did, while illegal at the time and as shady as you could get, is almost essentially totally legal now?
It's the height of irony, isn't it? Mm-hmm. And sometimes irony really sucks. and yeah, look, it killed their program. It killed their program for almost 25 years. I mean, it wasn't just a 2-year penalty and then you come back to play and everything picks up right where it left off. They never recovered. And in some ways, I mean, I guess, Sonny Dykes, when he was at SMU, got them to a point, and June Jones maybe did back when he was coaching them, to where they could be, really competitive and if not necessarily winning conference championships, but at least being competitive. Well, again, where SMU was at the time of the death penalty, if you take that and, put it to today, well, they would be clearly where TCU was last January. They'd be playing for national championships. I don't think there's any question about that. But now, they're not in a major conference. They have to struggle to get attention in their hometown of Dallas. And I don't think that they will ever recover from ultimately what happened with the death penalty, even if now they put together, a really nice program and one that certainly can appeal to Dallas area players who sometimes go away thinking that the grass is greener on the other side, but basically saying, it's okay at home. I can come play at home and do well, and the NFL scouts will notice me if I play well enough and have a chance to be drafted.
Chuck, if you go ahead. I'm sorry, Craig.
Chuck, there's been some scuttlebutt, some smoke about SMU and the potential of a Pac-12 invitation. Obviously, George Kliavkoff was very visible at a basketball game, 2 or 3 weeks ago at this point, and that's kind of died down a little bit as those negotiations for the TV deal have continued. But what do you think a Pac-12 membership would do for SMU as a program? Would that excite the people of Dallas? Would that get more people on board if all of a sudden they were playing, these California schools or West Coast schools, Arizona schools, as opposed to who they're facing now?
I mean, I don't see the fit with SMU. I mean, I think, again, the jump is to what is perceived to be a Power 5 league, but is the Pac-12 really a Power 5 league without UCLA and USC? I mean, I don't know. I mean, they're certainly not as strong. And from the Pac-12 standpoint, really, what does SMU give them? What does SMU give them? I mean, maybe they give them a chance to recruit in Texas, which I guess can, certainly can help them. But there are many different ways that Texas kids can go now, and they don't necessarily have to go as far away as they would if they were going to the Pac-12. I think it's far more likely that the Arizona schools are coming east as opposed to the Pac-12 taking SMU to the west. I mean, SMU is looking for brand identification, if you will, with being in a Power 5 conference. But again, if people can't see them play, what's the point?
Chuck, the NCAA tournament officially began last night. 2 more games tonight. The Big 12 has 7 teams. We know how deep the conference. Kansas at 1, Texas red hot at 2, Baylor slipped to a 3, K-State 4, and then you have the up and down but dangerous TCU, Iowa State, and then West Virginia with Bob Huggins. Which of those teams are you a little bit not sold on maybe getting to the second weekend?
I think Baylor's got a problem.
Yep. Defense.
Scott Drew made his bones on defense and made that the ability to change defenses, play the zone, and then when he got better athletes, he was able to go back to playing man-to-man, and they would dominate people. And certainly you look at the championship team 2 years ago, that was a completely dominant backcourt where teams could never get into their offense. I mean, how they took apart Gonzaga in the championship game was as clinical as any performance I think that we've seen in quite some time. And Baylor doesn't have that right now. And they don't quite have the rim protection that they have. The guard shooting is a bit suspect. I think it's nice to have Flagler, as a lead guard. I think he's certainly more than capable. But I tell you what, as much as he was so up and down and frustrating to watch, but they miss Matthew Meyer. They miss Matthew Meyer a ton because of his ability to be able to shoot and spread the floor. But I'm not really sold on them. I think TCU's kind of a mess right now too. I think they'll probably be able to get through the first game, but they won't beat Gonzaga. I think Kansas, frankly, is in big trouble. They did not get a good draw at all. Number one, not being able to be in the regional that could get to Kansas City, but I don't know that they would that they're getting out of the first weekend. I think if they wind up playing Arkansas in the second round, Arkansas is going to give them everything they want. Arkansas's got pros on their team now. I mean, you got 2 guys in Nick Smith and Anthony Black who are going to be lottery picks, and Ricky Council could very well be a first-round pick too. His age may work against him, but from a talent standpoint, he's a first rounder. That's a bad matchup for Kansas because if Kansas has to rely on their defense right now. I think their offense is very spotty, and also I think if Bill Self is not available to coach, and this is no disrespect to Norm Roberts at all, because I do think he's been a very fine assistant. I think he did a good job last weekend in Kansas City. But Bill Self's one of the great in-game adjusters in the college game. And if they have to play Arkansas, I think, and Bill Self's not there, then they're really in trouble. They might be in trouble anyway.
Chuck Cooperstein with us on 365 Sports. When you look at Kelvin Sampson in Houston, where they are, a number 1 seed and obviously have had a heck of a run. Made a run last year, made a run 2 years ago until they ran into that buzzsaw from Baylor. Your thoughts about, are they more ready this year? I know Sasser's injury is a big deal. More ready this year to make even that run to get back to the Final Four?
Absolutely. I mean, all the metrics tell you that they're the best team in the country. Now, I'm not sure that they are, because I think it's certainly the presence of Brandon Miller and Quinterly and Clowney. I think Alabama may have more high-end NBA-ready players or level players than Houston does, although Houston has pros themselves. But no team plays harder than Houston. You will never outwork a Kelvin Sampson coach team. And for Houston, it basically comes down to whether or not they'll shoot. They will always guard. They will always really make it difficult for you. But sometimes their shooting goes haywire. And, this is a one and done type of tournament. One bad night and you're out. That's the one thing I would worry about with Houston, and especially if Sasser is not available, certainly for the second round game, which could be a really interesting game against either Iowa or Auburn. But, really, when they get to the Sweet 16, if he's not playing, I think they do become more vulnerable. But I love their team. I love how hard they play. And in the end, I do think Sasser will play. And I think it would be very, very surprising if they are not in the last 8. And just slightly less surprising if they weren't in the Final Four in Houston.
Coop, kind of a three-pronged question here, so bear with me. But Texas, the job Rodney Terry has done to put them in position, your thoughts on them as a contender and what he's been able to do? And on the flip side, know you're a Florida Gator, SEC guy. Curious how you feel about Chris Beard being named the new coach at Ole Miss this week.
Well, it certainly didn't take long for Chris Beard to get a job. I guess I'm a little surprised that that Ole Miss didn't even wait until like the tournament was over or something like that. But Chris Beard's a great coach. I mean, he is, and as long as he's legally in the clear, I don't see where Ole Miss has done anything wrong here. It'd be another story if there were outstanding legal issues, but there aren't. So why not go and hire him? He's a proven winner. He definitely knows how to recruit. And in a league that is getting better and better every year, and the coaching in that league is getting better and better every year, that was a big-time hire by Ole Miss. No question about that.
Chuck?
And
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, and the first question was, again, real quick, what was the first question?
What do you think about the job Rodney Terry has done?
Oh, Rodney Terry. Okay, yeah. Rodney Terry should be the Texas coach today, full time. The not interim coach. He should be the head coach of the University of Texas. Now, again, I don't know if Rodney Terry is a great coach, but I do know that Rodney Terry, under really adverse circumstances, did a phenomenal job with that team. And maybe that means that ultimately he is a great coach. I don't know that he's necessarily had shown it in the past, but given his performance this year under the most dire of circumstances, even if he has a veteran team, I mean, teams don't go through stuff like that and ultimately play as well as they play. And then, to a crescendo, hand a 20-pointer on Kansas in the Big 12 championship final. I mean, that was fantastic stuff. They're very versatile. They really guard hard. They've got they shoot the ball okay, and we'll see. I think that he can recruit. I mean, look, Chris Beard hired him because he thought he could recruit, right? So I don't know what they're waiting on unless they think they're going to hire Rick Pitino, which would definitely fit the Chris Del Conte mold. But, sometimes it's okay. Sometimes the guy that's sitting right in front of your nose is the right guy. And I do think Rodney Terry is the right guy right now.
Chuck, thank you, buddy. Appreciate your time as always. Mavericks voice.
Sorry.
Yeah. Good to have you.
Sorry about the interruption. About the interruptions.
No, it was great. It was great. It was fantastic. It's live, and we appreciate you for jumping back in with us. Chuck Cooperstein, voice of the Mavericks, with us on the tournament, on the Big 12 Combine in Frisco, and so much more. Coming up, Rob Douster, the field of